Hi, and welcome back. For this section of the webinar, I'll be discussing the basics of blocking and creating stage pictures. There are three basic principles of blocking that I will refer to. First principle is level. This is the vertical physical relationship between actors. So how tall, the height differences between the things on stage. Plane, how far or how close the actor is from the audience. And three, proximity. It's the relationship between the actors that help to establish the relationship between the actors on stage. Here are some basics of blocking and creating stage pictures. Your blocking should help to establish the characters' relationship, should tell us how the characters feel about each other through their spatial relationships, through the way they're arranged on stage. So a group of characters that are all standing together and you have one character that's isolated, that communicates a lot about the character's relationship within the story. We may assume that this person is a stranger, they don't know, they're not a part of this group. We may assume that this person is being isolated based on their body language. Maybe this group is isolating this one particular character, or we can assume again, like this person is new to the group and they have not yet been introduced. The blocking should also reveal the characters, give us insight through the way the characters move. The movement should explore ways to reveal the psychology of your character through blocking. A character's movement can help reveal as much and sometimes more than his or her words do. So I always encourage my actors, especially when they're directing a scene within small groups, is to really understand who the characters are and help and have the blocking help to support that or enhance that. The blocking should also create dynamic stage pictures that convey the meaning and the mood for the play. A basic approach to creating more dynamic stage pictures is to play with different angles, playing with different use of different levels throughout the play, as well as having your actors stand different planes. I always remind my actors that please, throughout the scene, do not want all the characters standing in one line. You don't want all the characters sitting. Play with levels. Someone might be standing up, someone might be sitting, someone might be sitting on the floor. Play with how you're using spatial relationships, but create more dynamic stage pictures that really help to communicate what's happening in the story. Also, your blocking should determine your focal points. Give focus to certain characters at certain moments. If in a particular play, this character is having a central moment, they are saying something that's really important. You may have your actors facing that character. That informs the audience where to look. You may have the actors standing center stage and they're surrounded by other characters. That informs the audience that that person is an important character. What's happening in this particular moment is important, and that's where your focus should be. Here are a few exercises that introduce the basics of Anne Bogart's viewpoints that help students understand how to tell the story through the use of spatial relationship, use of space, understanding tempo, kinesthetic response, and time. When creating blocking, it is very important to understand spatial relationship. This is one of the viewpoints. It is the distance between things and their orientation to each other. So it's the spatial relations, the position, the direction or orientation of objects or individuals, and how they can influence the way we communicate through the viewpoint. So based on how people are arranged on stage can communicate a lot about how they feel about each other, the relationships between these characters. Now, there two types of distance that we have. There's the polite distance, which is your normal everyday distance that we keep in our lives, what's expected. And especially during COVID, it's 6 feet apart. There's uncomfortable distance. This is breaking the normal distance expectation by either standing too close or too far. And this usually communicates to the audience if the characters are super close, so that means that their relationship is really close. This might be it's a love interest, their love interest, or this might result in a fight because they're extremely uncomfortably too close to each other. If they're too far, it also communicates the relationship. These characters might not be comfortable with each other enough to stand close. There's some type of tension that is building between the two characters or characters on stage. So you may have students working in groups of two, so they partner up, and at least one of the actors will use a chair, and they'll perform the following prompt while ignoring the others in the room. So these two individuals, the scenario might be they're meeting up to discuss a sale of a car, ring, dog, doesn't matter. They're selling something, they're discussing the sale. And you may have them start off the scene with polite distance. So how we would generally just what's expected, what's respectful, in terms of personal space. And then as the scene evolves, you'll have the actors start to play around with breaking that norm. And we would later discuss at the end of the scene, how did that make them feel? What was their experience like? Why in this particular moment did they choose to either be too close or too far, to move away from each other, to move towards each other? And how did that help to communicate what was happening with the character emotionally and mentally in that particular moment? So with this exercise, I wanted students to become more aware of how they can use their bodies, how they can use movement to, one, create interesting characters, two, create interesting stage pictures that reveals the relationship between the characters and who they are, as well as ways they can really use the space to demonstrate the emotional life of the character as well. I think a lot of young actors get so caught up in just memorizing the line, and they can be very stiff on stage and don't really know how to use their body or how to use the space to really communicate and convey the story. So these exercises helps to kind of loosen them up and build their awareness on how to do so. So these are exercises that I generally use as a part of a warm-up as I'm teaching these concepts of levels, proximity, and planes in isolation. Then once we get closer to actual scene work and working on a particular story, I then teach them, then I discuss tableaus and stage pictures.